What most people picture as plate armor is the late medieval and Renaissance European system of shaped iron or steel plates worn over padded garments, usually with mail still protecting the gaps. In Europe, plates began appearing over mail in the 13th century, expanding through the 14th, and by the 1420, the fully articulated head-to-toe harness was in place. In the 15th century, it became dominant, the elite battlefield armor. After about the 1500s, styles changed again, and by the 17th century, most soldiers wore only partial plate, such as cuirasses and helmets, rather than full plate harnesses. The simplest timeline is this: mail first, plate reinforced second, full plate last. In the late 13th century, warriors started adding plates over mail at especially vulnerable points. During the 14th century, separate plate defenses for the limbs and torso became more common, along with torso armors like the coat of plates. By about 1420, armorers had solved the problem of making a full articulated steel shell that still moved with the body. Around the 1500s, the silhouette shifted from sharper Gothic lines to rounder forms, and between about 1515 and 1535, the fluted Maximilian fashion became especially prominent. In the 17th century, armor did not vanish overnight, but it was gradually reduced to what still made sense against firearms and for cavalry service. The classic mature form was the field harness: helmet, breastplate, backplate, arm defenses, gauntlets, leg defenses, and sabatons, all articulated with overlapping lames, rivets, straps, buckles, and hinges. There were also specialized variants. A garniture was a base armor with interchangeable pieces for war and different forms of tournament. It is also important to separate field armor from tournament and parade armor. Some armors were built for the lance, some for foot combat in the lists, and some for just display. Rich etchings and gilding, do not automatically mean an armor was non-functional. Some war armors were lavishly decorated, but not every ornate armor was intended for serious battlefield protection. The Wallace collection, for example, notes one elaborate late 16th century Milanese armor made of thin, soft iron that would have offered little real defense. The helmet. Earlier helmets only protected the cranium, but later versions also protected the face or even the neck. There was the bevor, a late armor piece which protected the neck and lower face, similar to a gorget, which only covers the neck. Pauldrons protected the shoulders and sometimes attached with besigues, which covered the armpits. The difference between a pauldron and a spolder is spolders were earlier and covered less area. A cuirass, main part of the armor which protected the torso of the wearer, similar to breastplates, but breastplates only covered the front of the torso, whereas the cuirass had a backplate too. The placard only existed when the cuirass or breastplate didn't cover the whole front torso. A rear brace, upper arm protection, very rarely used alone, usually paired with coiters and a vambrace. The coiters were the elbow protection, most of the time they were plate. Vambrace, lower arm protection, usually made of plate, sometimes leather with metal studs or splints. The gauntlets were the hand protection, either fingered or mittens. The folds protected the gap between the torso and the legs, usually was attached to the bottom of the cuirass and consisted of multiple layers of overlapping metal plates. Sometimes tassets were attached, which covered the legs to the knee. Cuisses, upper leg protection, which was attached to the thighs. Sometimes they covered only the front, but sometimes they went fully around the thigh. Some were made of leather with metal studs and plinths as reinforcements. The paulines, knee protection. Greaves were the shin protection, either only front, but sometimes they covered the calves too. And lastly, the sabatons, which were the feet protection, with extended log-pointed toes, which helped the knight stay on the saddle of the horse. Materials and construction. The iconic mature harness was mostly iron or steel plate, combined with leather straps, rivets, and textile lining. and worn over an arming garment. Earlier or supplementary plates could also be made from hardened leather, but the classic 15th and 16th century knight harness was an overwhelmingly metal system. Complete armors would often also include leather and cloth components as part of their structure. Metallurgy varied a lot by period, region, and price level. Plate armor was not one of the universal material standard. Researches by Alan Williams shows that some of the best late armors include high-quality Greenwich pieces made of bloomery steel and heat-treated, and some South German examples reached very high hardness. At the same time, not all elite-looking armor was equally hardened. Williams found that many richly decorated 16th century Italian armors were not hardened in the same way as some German and English work. The cost and time to make. Like mail, plate armor was expensive, largely because it combined skilled metallurgy, shaping, fitting, articulation, and finishing. The Metropolitan Museum notes that low to medium quality armor was affordable enough for burghers, mercenaries, and lower nobility, and that ready-made pieces could be bought in shops, markets, and fairs. At the high end, though, custom court armors could be spectacularly expensive. Production time also varied enormously. The Metropolitan Museum says there is no single answer because it depended on the work was ready-made or custom, the size of the workshop, and the quality requested. A stock item could be acquired much faster than a princely commission. At the extreme end, a large garniture with many exchange pieces made by a leading court workshop as assistants could take about a year. Effectiveness. At its best, plate armor was extremely effective. By the 15th century, the combination of plate, mail, and padded underlayers offered the best personal protection available in Europe against cuts, many thrusts, and a lot of battlefield impact. Full harness did not mean a rigid metal statue. Articulation through lames and rivets allowed a surprising range of motion, and modern tests found that even untrained men in properly fitted armor could run, get up from the ground, and mount or dismount a horse. The long life of plate armor reflects that it worked. That said, plate armor was never invulnerable. Weapons and armor evolved together. By the 16th century, armors were responding to firearms by hardening steel, thickening plates, and adding reinforcement pieces. Some cuirasses were literally test-fired with a pistol or musket, and the dent left behind served as a proof mark. But heavier protection meant more weight, and over time firearms changed tactics, pushed many soldiers away from the full-body harness toward more selective protection. The real decline of armor only in the second half of the 17th century, not immediately with the appearance of guns. The weight and mobility. The popular image of plate as impossibly heavy is exaggerated. The Metropolitan Museum gives a usual field armor weight is about 45 to 55 pounds, so roughly 20 to 25 kilograms, with the weight distributed across the body rather than hanging from one point. Surviving examples fit that general picture, though that there is a wide range. A Wallace field armor weighs around 16.3 kilograms, a field and tournament armor 23.7 kilograms, a Greenwich garniture about 28.45 kilograms, and a later three-quarter armor was about 25.75 kilograms. Especially heavy-proof armors for firearms era cavalry could go beyond that. One cuirassier armor weighs around over 86 pounds. Maintenance. Plate armor was a constant maintenance project. Steel had to be protected against rust, and armor also dependent on straps, rivets, buckles, and textile linings that could wear out even if the plates themselves survived. Surfaces were not always plain mirror polished. Some armors had elaborate dark, black and white finishes or russeted surfaces, while others were blued, etched, gilded, or silvered. That means upkeep was not just to wipe the steel, but also preserving the finish and preparing the soft components that made the harness wearable. A complete historical price list even records charges for cleaning rust off corselets and for restrapping riveting them, which fits the practical reality of armor as a maintenance working system rather than a single lump of metal. As a summary, plus my favorite types of armors, if mail was the great flexible armor of the early Middle Ages, plate was the high point of fitted personal protection in the late medieval and Renaissance Europe. It began as reinforcement over mail, became fully articulated shell by the early 15th century, and then split into battlefield, tournament, cavalry, and infantry forms. Good plate was usually steel-based, tailored, mobile, and very effective. The best examples were expensive, technically sophisticated products from major armor-making centers. Its eventual reduction was not because it was useless, but because firearms, cost, weight, and changing warfare made full coverage less and less worthwhile.